that lights can be used as a decorative element, because nowadays we have a lot of decorative, beautiful looking lights in the market, and we tend to, go overboard and buy everything that's not needed. But first thing, while you're considering lights, you have to keep in mind what is its function. Is it serving some function in your house, in your homes, and then buy it. All right. So always keep function in mind. Please mute the video.
Why too short? My thing.
Can you please mute the videos? All right, thank you. Let's continue. Okay, next point is that lights define the activity of the space. So now you guys can see this image here and see two major lighting in this. It's elongated lights, linear elongated lights. And what it does here is define the activity of the space in the sense that as we can see, somewhat like a meeting room or a conference room, but the way the light is and the form of the light is defining. It's an elongated space. So the lights have to be elongated because activities are comprehending to that. So what we do here is like we're all sitting around the table, you're working on the desk. So the light is only needed here. These lights in its form is defining that activity. Right? So lights have that quality as well when it comes to interior design. Next. Lights sets a mood to the space. All right. So now, as you can see in this image, this is a bedroom. And we have very limited lights here. You have a pendant light here, some backlighting here, few spotlights, and then the natural lighting. So during the morning scenario, we have natural light to lit the room. But when it comes to nighttime, the bedroom is mostly what we prefer for a cozy, private space. So you would prefer to have the lighting that gives a very warm, cozy mood to it. All right. So to create that mood, what can we do with lights? So as you can see, they've limited the use of lightings here and given it a very warm yellowish hue so that we feel comfortable, warm, and cozy. So lights can do this as well. They can create the mood. It can set let's say if you're using yellowish lights, it can be setting a mood of warm, cozy feeling. But if you're going for off-whitish type lights, it would set the mood of something very clean, stark looking. All right. Next, lights affects the perceived size of a room. All right. So now this is very important. As you can see in this image here, the bed, it's a bedroom, and just by looking at it, I can say this width is around 2 meters and there's space on either sides. Let's say that's around 60 centimeters. Altogether, the width of the room, let's say it's coming around 3 meters. It's kind of less for a room. And in general cases, it is congested. But as you can see, what our mind perceives, this room looks fine. It looks pretty lit up. It's very airy. It looks spacious. So this is what happens with our mind when it perceives the size of a room when there's good lighting. As you can see, the natural light coming from the side is making this room look very spacious and airy, plus the light color scheme on the walls combined with both of it, it's giving an effect of the room is spacious. So our minds tend to perceive things in such way, and we can use this to an advantage when we are designing the room. Now, let's say when it comes to like if you're buying an apartment or something like that, and we don't have the control over the size of the room, you have to adjust with what's there. So in this scenario, you can work with lights and the colors to give, to visually have a spacious room in this manner. Next, light enhances colors and textures. So this is a very important topic as well. It's a very vast topic. Lights do have an effect on the colors and textures and how it's seen. Now, as you can, if you can think about it, like colors and textures, let's say any color looks the most natural in sunlight, right? In natural light, it looks the best. You can see it in its very essence, and textures as well. All right, so it's always better to go with natural light and colors and textures because you can see them in their essence. But when it comes to artificial lighting, what happens? As you can see here, this is a design wall. It's got natural stone. And let's imagine a scenario where these lights that's highlighting this wall was not to be there. It would look pretty cold because it's stone, it's grain color. Our mind is going to perceive it, the room, as being very cold. But as you can see, what is this little light doing so much here? It's just a yellowish light. It's just highlighting, but it is, or you can say it's enhancing the shadows here. It's giving more depth and it's creating a dramatic effect. So learn and experiment with lights and see what is their relation when it comes to colors and textures as well. It's never the same color when or the texture when it comes under light. Similarly, if you take, let's say, a red color wall, and if you give a yellowish hue lighting, obviously the wall is going to look a bit orangish, and maybe that's not what you had in mind. So always keep in mind that lights affect colors and textures, and go and design accordingly, keeping this in mind. With lights come shadows, thus depth. And I'm going to quote Louis Kahn saying that what is made by light casts a shadow and the shadow belongs to light. So this is emphasizing how shadow and light is interrelated, and with light there is shadows. So we can use this to an advantage in interior design where you can make it a design element where the shadow effect comes. As you can see in this image, we have a ceiling. It's by steps, okay, it looks fine, and there's a little light coming here and corresponding shadow, and it's creating a dramatic effect. Now, if we were to imagine a scenario where this was no lights like these and it's just bright, it would probably not be a focal point, right? It would, we just look at the ceiling, okay, it looks plain, but this with little lighting and the shadow corresponding, it's giving such a dramatic effect and it's creating a strong focal point in the room. All right, so we can use light and shadows to our advantage like this and incorporate it as a design element in our space. Next, so light in its form can be an aesthetic element. Now, this is the point that you have to keep in mind in the last, because you have to consider function. I'm emphasizing that again. But in the end, when everything you have chosen your lights, you have decided for what function they're going for, now you can think about how the light can look in an aesthetic way, all right? So for example, this room, it's a staircase and it has this light in middle. So usually or conventionally, we never put lights for stairs, but nowadays it is, we see in designs how stairs have lighting, because, and it's just not for a design purpose, it's for the safety purpose. Okay, anyways, in this scenario, they're trying to light up the stairs here, so the function is done. Now, when it comes to aesthetics, see what they have created, something like a vine or something like it's branching out, and it's giving us such a good visual impact there. All right, so a space that could have been very boring with simply lit stairs now has a more meaning to it. Right, so when you choose your lights, first decide the function and then go for that aesthetic element that adds more to your space. All right. So with this in mind, we're going to talk about now types of lights. So lights are categorized based on their function, all right? Not type of light as in like chandelier or things like that, but based on their function, they can be categorized. So we're going to see how. So one category of light obviously is the natural light, and try to use as much as natural light in your room possible, because as I said before, the colors and textures always look better in natural light. Natural light has the light's color, something we cannot describe. It's like describing the color of water, right? So the effect natural light has with colors and textures is something very beautiful. It shows the very essence of them. So always go for natural light. There's never too much natural light. And if there is at all, there's always curtains for them. Yeah. So what else does natural light help in interior design? It makes a room appear bigger when naturally lit. So we spoke about that example as well, where a small room can look pretty airy and light when it's lit properly. You can just see the images as well. And spaces feel airy and light. It's energy efficient. So nowadays we're going for a sustainable, more of a bringing sustainability in home design and things like that. You have to consider this fact, and when it's possible to have the natural light, you don't have to switch on any other lights, and it's pretty energy efficient. So keep that in mind as well. Also, it induces a healthy and energetic vibes. Nowadays, most of us are working from home. So you must be seeing the difference when you're working in the morning and in the night. In the morning, it's naturally we are more energetic. That natural light brings a very good feeling for us and makes us more productive as well. But when it comes to night, compared to natural light, let's say we have artificial lights, and they tend to eventually strain our eyes, and you eventually tire out while working. So always have a good source of natural lighting so that you can have a very good productive environment. All right. So next we're going to talk about artificial lights. I'm going to start with ambient light. So ambient light is basically the substitute for natural light. So obviously when it comes to night time, we do need to have a source of general lighting. So ambient light does that. It comes in the form of chandeliers. Over here we have recessed lighting, but in a linear form. We have recessed lighting again in spotlights, and we have a torchlight here as well. All right. So these are the types of few types of lighting that come under ambient lighting. So what else does it do? It sets a common hue to the space. So if you're going for a warm, cozy feeling, you can go yellowish tint. You can keep a yellowish tint to the room, but if you're going for something very clean, starky, and something you want to like, this room is very brightly lit, and you're going for something that can be like it's a closet, and you're just going. There's nothing much you're doing here except for changing clothes. So this is something very a direct purpose is there, and you go for some bright lights over there. Now, a torchlight is something usually we have flow lamps. So the flow lamps comes like that, and it lights up any function you're doing, like reading or something. But a torchlight is something that is lit upside. So it's not pointing downwards, it's pointing upwards, and it lights up a room. Then ambient light defines the particular mood of the room. Again, as I mentioned, if you're going for yellowish lights, it's going to be pretty warm and cozy. But if you're going for white lights, it's going to look very clean. And another type of artificial lighting is accent lighting. So this is more of decorative lighting, and I would say you should keep this in mind only in the end. All right, you can only think about accent lighting in the end because it's decorative lighting. Doesn't serve much of a purpose. What it does is like highlight physical features in a room. Now, as you can see this picture here, it's just a series of arches, and if you were to imagine them without the lights, this would look like pretty plain and not interesting, but you can see how much dimension these lights are adding to these series of arches. Similar way, you can see a small spotlight here that's highlighting an artwork, and the rest of the area surrounding it is dark. So the main point over here is to re-emphasize a focal point. So usually when we have a space, we try to bring in focal points that draws the attention of the viewer. And to re-emphasize these focal points, you can use accent lighting, right? It combines with shadows for a dramatic effect. As you can see in this image here, we have a stone wall, okay, so a stone clad wall. We have spotlights, and between the spotlights, consecutively, we have the shadows as well. So you can see how well the pattern is giving a dramatic effect. And in the case if these lights were not there, how plain it would look, and our eyes wouldn't be drawn to it. All right, so you can use accent lighting for a dramatic effect. Also can draw eyes away from botched design elements. So again, you might tend to go overboard with the design in the room, and eventually it doesn't look good. So in that case, you can always divert anyone's attention by keeping that area dark, but emphasizing other focal points with accent light. Then we come to the last type of lighting, that is task lighting. It's basically a function-oriented lights used for a particular function. So let's say in this case, we have an office table here, and it has a lighting right above it that reflects the same shape of the table. So what's the purpose? Only to light the area where the person is working. So that is what task lighting is. It's used for illuminating detailed task works. It can be glare-free to minimize the eye strain. So let's say we have a living room, and in between we do use the living room for reading purposes, but just because of this, we cannot keep the artificial lighting very bright every time. Right? You want to set a mood to that living room. It has to be dimly lit, but at the same time, you want to have a space that has bright light. So in this case, let's say you are, let's see this image, you are having an armchair. Right next to it, you can place a floor lamp that only illuminates the activity that you plan to do. Right? And subsequently, it reduces the glare as well, because it's just illuminating the book and not the whole surrounding, and it doesn't affect your eyes directly. Also, it's brighter than the general lighting, as I mentioned. As you can see in this image, nowadays we do have a lighting system under the cabinets in the kitchen to light that area between the countertop and the cabinets, which is usually dark. All right, so to work much better, to see things much better, we can place recessed lights between below the cabinet. All right, so just keeping all these type of lights in mind. Now, let's say you want to design a space, and conventionally, what do? We go for lights, we buy the lights, you bring them, you buy the furniture, bring them, and you space them, and it doesn't look like what you had in your mind. So what to do now? So we have the convenience of using virtual software that can design your thoughts, and you can see them, all right, before the final output. You can see how it's going to look and then proceed to the final design. So a software that's going to help us with lights is 3ds Max from Autodesk. It's a very powerful software. It's just not used for interior design. It's used for many other like animation and things as well. But today I'm just going to show you a small demo on how we can place lights in a scene, and I'm going to show you the efficiency of this software, and let's see how that goes. All right. Okay, so to begin with, this is the interface of 3ds Max. When you open it, it basically has 4 viewports. And what it does is that, let's say if you're modeling in this space, okay, you can subsequently see the top view, the front view, and the left view from here. All right, so whatever you model here, you can subsequently see it. I'm just going to brush through the basics, all right, because our topic for today is lights, so I want to concentrate on that more. But basically, this is what it does. You can model here, and you can see the subsequent outlines from different sides in the different viewport, all right. And over here, we have the option to create objects. We have the option to modify these created objects. Then we can create lights, cameras, environments, etc. All right. So basically how 3ds Max works is that first you model something, then you give material. So when it comes to interior design, let's say you're modeling a space and you're giving the material to the flooring. Let's say I want a porcelain tile. So you give the materials. Then the scene has to be visually, we'll want to see it. So we place lights just as how we would place in a real room. And finally, we do rendering. So I will explain what rendering is later on. So I have a scene preset here, and I'm going to work with that. Okay, so this is a preset room, all right? And as you can see the top view from here, front view, side view, everything is here. So what we are going to do now is that I'm going to show you how to place the lights in this room and what is the consequent effect of it. Now, as I mentioned before, rendering is basically, here we are getting to see the room, some colors and all, but this is not the exact final output. To process the final output, it takes a lot from the computer side. So we have the process called as rendering, which we keep to the end. All right, we keep that process to the end so that we can come out with realistic image outputs. So in this case, there's no lights in this scene, and if I go for render now, it's going to turn out pretty dark. You're not going to see anything much. So you can see it's processing something, but it's going to stay pretty dark because there's no lights as such. This takes a lot of time, the rendering. Usually if it's a really good, like if your project is pretty big, it takes even days, overnight and all to process the rendering, because it takes a lot of effort from the computer side. It's processing a lot of, where you can see a lot of imaging, there's a lot of computing that goes into it. Yes, as you can see in this room, it looks pretty dark now. So we're going to try adding few lights to it. I'm going to start with a sunlight. So of lights here, I'm going to go for Corona. So this is basically, we have type of renders. As I mentioned here, renders, it can be plugins from outside as well. So you must have heard of V-Ray, and another option we have in render is Corona. All right, so I'm working with Corona today to show you the lights. So I'm going to use the lights from Corona as well. All right, and over here I'm going to start with a natural light. I'm going to select the sun. Please do excuse. It does tend to hang on a bit. All right, okay. So I'm going to add the Corona sun. I've chosen that here, and as you can see, I have a window here. So I want to add the sun in such a way that it passes through the window. So keeping that in mind, I'll just do that. And I have created the sun. So it passes through the window, it's going inside the room, and this is the interpretation of sun, right? So if I look at from the front view, it looks, as you can see, the rays are passing through the room, but I don't want this. I want it to pass through the window here. All right, so I'm just gonna change the sun's positioning a bit. Okay, let's keep it far away, like how the sun would be. All right. Now let's see what happens when we render now. As you can see, there's nothing seen here, but when we go for the option of render, you can see that the lights are there and the room is getting more visible with the sunlight. Right? It will get a bit more clearer. There you go. All right. You can see some ray of light is coming in and there's much more better visibility than what we had in the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead, change few options for the light so that it looks better. All right. So I have selected the sun. I'm going to change a few settings. I'm going to keep the intensity a bit less. Let's keep the size of the sun a bit big. I'm going to add a sky also, and now let's see how it looks, right? So basically I've changed few numbers here. For you right now, if you're new to this, it might be a bit confusing, but once you start learning this in detail, it will be much more clear. All right, so let's see what this has done. Now the lighting more better here, so I'm going to change few values here so that this looks much better. So it's bigger and we have the option to make it brighter from here as well. So I'm going to go ahead, change it to, right? You can see how the change is coming. It looks a bit more brighter. I can change these values. So if I want to go for a very sunny yellowy day. So I can tweak these numbers. So this is on 6,000. If I keep it on any value above 6,000, it's going to get a yellowish hue. But if I'm going to keep it any value below 6,000, it becomes a very whitish hue. All right. So we have the option to do that as well. So if you're going for a rainy look, you can do that here. You can change few settings with the. And so please do mute them, mic, please. Thank you. Right. So this is the option we have with sunlight. Now let's see with artificial lights. All right. So I'm going to switch off the sun for now. We don't need the sun.
Your phone. Your phone.
I should off it. I want to ride bicycle. I'm coming. Let me finish.
So I'm going to start with artificial light. So we saw how the effect of natural light is. So from the same options in lights and corona, we have the option of corona light. So basically this is the natural lighting, this is the artificial light. So if I'm going to choose this, the first type of lighting I'm going to add in this room is that a cove lighting, all right? It's basically an accent lighting which highlights the wall. So that comes in the shape of a rectangle. So first I'm going to choose rectangle and then I'm going to draw the light. Okay. I'm going to adjust it here. So a cove light basically comes between the structural ceiling and the normal room ceiling. So this is the structural ceiling, and I've placed it between that. All right, I'm going to change it in such a way that this light is seen a bit more outside. You don't have to see about the settings now. Just see what's the outcomes we can get out of the software. All right. Here as well. I'm going to keep the intensity a bit more. Let's say 200. And I'm going to give a yellowish hue to the light as well. Yellowish. Now let's see what that looks like. Basically what we are looking for is like a small accent lighting from between, and there you go. As you can see, it's come now and we have a sort of a cove lighting between the ceiling. All right, so it's creating a very good effect. So the sun, we can off it for now because we're just going to see how artificial light looks like in a night mode. I'm going to stop this here and add the rest of the lightings. This one is on. So we have a cove lighting. Next, I'm going to add a general lighting. As you can see, and from what we saw in the presentation, a chandelier serves as a general lighting. So a lighting for this, but I don't want it to be in the shape of the flower or anything, or the shape of the chandelier. I'm just going to create a normal light, but I'm going to hide its shape. All right. So again, for that, the option is corona light here. It's the artificial light. I'm just going to create another rectangular shape. Okay, that's almost in the size of it. I'm going to place it well on the ceiling, okay, right below chandelier. And so for this, we can keep the intensity a bit low because it's just a general lighting. And I'm going to use the option of it not being visible so that I don't want to see a block of white square light there, just the effect I want to see. All right, so let's see how that turns out. In the color, we can keep a bit lighter. So we're going for rendering again. Now the room has got a bit more light to it. So if you want to increase the lighting in the room, I can increase the intensity here and change it as well. All right, next I'm going to add a light for this lamp here so that we can see how a task light can be added. So for that, I'm going to use another artificial corona light, but this time, since the light over here is in the form of a sphere, I'm going to change this shape to a sphere and I'm going to place it. Place it up. Come inside. I'm going to change few values. I'll keep it targeted because I want to see the effect of light here, and intensity I'm going to keep it really a big amount because we have, as I mentioned, task lights are really bright compared to the general lighting. And let's see how that turns out. So yes, as you can see here, it's getting lit properly on this area. As you can see, it's quite bright, and we have placed a spot, what do you say, a flow lamp with a very bright light that can be used to light up the area in this space. So this is how we place lights. This is a very small demo. All right, so if you want to learn more about the software, you can join our 1 month courses with our college, or if you're interested in learning the interior design for diploma, you can join for that as well. You can contact our college for that. But before that, I just wanted to show you this is what those renders look like in the end. All right, I'll just share it with you. So this is the output in daylight with only sun. This is what we get. Anyways, this is rendered. It's kept for like more time. It's not, I won't be able to show it right now in night, but this is what the output looks like. And when it comes to nighttime, with a cove light, with a general lighting setting, a warm, cozy mood, this is what it would look like. So we have a flow lamp here doing the task light, and we have few pendant lights here, which is lit as well. So this is what we are going for, and this is what is possible. This is what is possible from the software. So again, if you're interested, please do join our courses. You can just on the software, or if you're interested in learning interior design, you can join for that as well. I will take your questions now regarding today's session. You can give the questions in the chat and I will reply them here. I won't be muting you because it will be a bit noisy. All right. So if you have any doubts, please mention it in the group chat. Please, any doubts at all, you can ask. I'm so sorry for the few glitches we had in between. There was few mics that were not muted and so on. So sorry for that. Any questions? Please feel free to ask. All right. So the Kelvins and area needs and all these are you can do the calculation online with this, and you can give. We do have the what do you say, options in 3ds Max to give those values, and you can get almost a realistic output out of it. All right, it's lights. It happens a bit more in depth. All right, so you can research on that, and then whatever as such you can't do in the software, but you can do it from outside, and you can input the value inside the software. So this is today's session. It's just on lights and what is possible with 3ds Max with lights. Any other questions? Does the position placement of flow lamp affect on the brightness of the light? Yes. So the more you go, like if you increase the height of the lamp, obviously the effect that it has would increase. Like in real life also, if you're keeping the lamp closer, it becomes brighter. When you keep it far away, it becomes lighter, right? So you can change the height of the light object as well, and it will be consequently reflected in the render. On what we should concentrate in choosing the light output for an area. So the question is not clear. So if you're talking in terms of the type of light, it depends on what your render has to look like. If you're going for a night view or a morning view, it's up to you. So what you have in mind, work with it and come out with the output. Right? So it's basically what you want the final to look like, and you can place the number accordingly. Is there a minimum number of lights to be used for small spaces? So as you saw in the first render, when there was no lights placed, it looked pretty dark. So at least one light has to be there so the render is visible when you render it, right? So at least one light has to be there. Again, which one is most important lights like for daily basis? Are you asking in real life or? So obviously you wouldn't go for real, if it's for daily basis, you wouldn't go for a lot of decorative lights. So basically ambient and general lighting, because that's providing the basic necessity there, and obviously the natural lighting. Any other questions? So should you go by Kelvin? So we do have the options of choosing Kelvin or just going by normal intensity. So that's up to you. You can choose the options of Kelvin and then change the values, or you can just go for basic intensity and change the values. All right. So when you start working with it, you can see the different options you have. So there's intensity, there's Kelvin, and there's more options that comes with that. So whatever you're comfortable, and if you know the Kelvins beforehand, you can work with that as well. Okay. At Capital College, I'm as an interior design instructor, and if you're interested to learn 3ds Max only, we do have 1 month certificate course. If you want to learn the whole course as well, we do have that as well. All right, so you can contact any queries related to the course or the software. You can contact our admissions team and they will let you know. In interior design, in our course, we have AutoCAD, 3ds Max, Photoshop, Illustrator, all these included in our 6 months diploma. Is that all? Any more questions? Okay, light has different shades. Which one is better, warm or cool light? Again, this is a personal preference. So as I mentioned, if you're going for, if it's a private space, if it's a bedroom or somewhere you don't want a lot of activity happening, you don't want your mind to be affected a lot, by a lot of light happening. So what do you go? You go for a dim light settings, and for that you use the yellowish shade, right? The warm light setting. Or else, if it's a kitchen, now over there, it's not advisable to have a warm light. It might look good, but eventually when you're working there, it will tire your eyes out. So over there, you go for the cool light, right? So it depends on the function and what you would prefer. What is the best space we can put between two spotlights? So it can come around 40 to 45 centimeters. It depends on how it would bring the effect to the wall. So 40 to 45 would be the dimension between two spotlights. 40 to 45 centimeters. Any other questions? So I guess that's it. Thank you everyone for coming for the session. Okay, we have one more question. What is the better lights we can use for floor? So for floor, if you're meaning just illuminate the floor from downwards, we can use spotlights that's given on the downside of the wall. So the adjacent wall that is to the floor, you can give these small recessed lights that highlights the floor. How about spotlight space from the wall? What is the standard? The question is not clear. Is it in with respect to the height or the width? So you can get the standards online if you're going for it. And basically, if it's the height, obviously it's the height of the ceiling. And I mentioned the dimension that has to be for between each spotlight. And from the wall, if you're asking it, leaving the width from the wall, it can be at least minimum 30, so that you can see the effect of the shadows on the wall. So if you keep it really close to the edge that's connecting the wall and the ceiling, you won't get that preferred effect. So keep it at least 30 centimeters apart. What wattage of light is better? Again, it depends upon your what the function is of the room. So if you're going for a very dim lit room, you can do it accordingly. All right. And with the software, you do have the option of changing the wattage and everything. So you can see how that effect looks and go subsequently for those lights in real life. All right, everyone. So thank you. Please stay safe, stay healthy, stay at home. And that's all for today's session. Please tune in to our college social media handles for more upcoming sessions in interior design. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.